Welcome back to the channel for another deep dive.
Hey.
This time,
Yeah.
we're diving into something that'll really make you think.
Oh.
The holographic universe. Our main guide for this journey is Michael Talbot's book, The Holographic Universe.
Right.
Get ready for some seriously intriguing ideas.
Yeah.
We're talking about things like, could our brains actually be holograms?
Right.
Storing memories,
Yeah.
not in specific spots, but spread out throughout.
It's a question that puzzled neuroscientist Carl Pribram for years.
Okay?
He was trying to figure out where memories are kept in the brain, but he was up against this common belief that memories lived in specific locations.
With files in a filing cabinet, right?
Exactly, and the research of neurosurgeon Wilder Penfield seemed to back that up.
Okay.
He could trigger specific memories in patients by stimulating certain parts of their brains during surgery.
So it seemed pretty open and shut.
Yeah.
But then Pribram came across the research of Carl Lashley,
Right.
which threw a big wrench into that neat little theory. Lashley had been working with rats,
Okay.
teaching them tasks and then removing parts of their brains.
And here's the kicker.
Okay.
No matter which part of the brain he removed, the rats could still perform the tasks they'd learned.
Really?
Those memories weren't stored in any single spot.
So it's like the memories were somehow spread out across the whole brain,
Right.
which led Pribram to this mind-blowing idea. What if the brain worked like a hologram? Now, for those of you who haven't encountered holograms before, maybe you can explain what makes them so unique and how they connect to Pribram's theory.
So think of a photograph.
Okay.
If you rip it in half, you only have half the picture, right? But a hologram is different.
Okay.
It stores information in a way that the whole image is contained in every piece. So even if you break a holographic plate into tiny bits, each piece can still recreate the entire image, just a bit fuzzier.
Wow.
Pribram's big leap was to propose that the brain might be doing something similar with memories, storing them as patterns spread throughout the brain, not in specific spots.
Okay, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So even if part of the brain gets damaged, the memory isn't lost because other parts can still access the whole thing.
Exactly.
It's almost like a backup system for our memories.
Yeah.
But was there any evidence to support this theory?
Initially, there was a lot of pushback from the scientific community. One skeptic was Paul Peach,
Okay.
a biologist who decided to put Pribram's theory to the test using salamanders.
Salamanders.
Yeah, he knew he could remove a salamander's brain without killing it,
Wow.
and that the creature would bounce back to normal once he put the brain back in.
Okay.
So he figured if he messed with the brain enough, he could disrupt those neatly stored memories and prove Pribram wrong.
So he was determined to find those memory files and scramble them up, right?
Exactly. Peach went to extremes.
Okay.
Removing parts of the salamander brains, flipping them upside down, even putting them into other salamanders.
Oh, wow.
But no matter what he did, their memories and behavior remained intact.
It's like those salamanders were saying, nope, you can't erase my memories that easily.
Right.
It's pretty convincing evidence for the holographic brain idea. Right.
It definitely lends support to the idea that memories are distributed rather than localized. It's almost as if the brain is encoding information as a waveform,
Okay.
which is exactly how a hologram works.
Now that brings up another intriguing point, this idea of waveforms and frequencies.
Yeah.
I know Talbot mentions something called Fourier transforms in relation to holograms.
Right.
Can you break that down for us?
Yeah.
Sounds a little intimidatingly technical.
It's not as complicated as it sounds.
Okay.
Imagine listening to a song.
Okay.
You hear the melody, the instruments, the vocals all blending together.
Right.
But a Fourier transform can take that complex sound and break it down into its individual frequencies,
Okay.
showing you the contribution of each instrument and note. It's like taking something complex and revealing its underlying wave structure. And it turns out our brains might be doing something similar with the information we receive from our senses.
So our brains are basically turning everything we see, hear, smell, taste, touch into a kind of hologram.
That's the idea. Research suggests that the brain processes sensory information as frequencies, much like a hologram stores information as a pattern of wave interference.
Okay.
And this holographic model might explain why our senses seem so interconnected.
So our brains aren't just storing memories holographically, they're actually perceiving reality holographically.
Right.
That's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But what does this all mean for our understanding of the universe as a whole? How do we go from a holographic brain to a holographic universe?
This is where the work of physicist David Bohm comes in.
Okay.
He was grappling with some of the mysteries of quantum physics,
Right.
particularly the strange behavior of subatomic particles.
Okay.
These particles didn't seem to have definite properties until someone observed them. It was as if they existed in a state of potential until an observer collapsed the wave function, forcing them to choose a specific state.
Okay, that's getting a little deep into quantum physics.
Yeah.
Could you maybe unpack that a bit more for those of us who aren't physicists?
Imagine a spinning coin.
Okay.
Until it lands, you can't say for sure whether it's heads or tails.
Right.
It exists in a state of both possibilities.
All right.
Similarly, subatomic particles seem to exist in this blurry state of multiple possibilities until they're measured or observed.
Okay.
This was a real head-scratcher for Bohm. He felt there had to be a deeper level of reality, a hidden order that explained this strange behavior.
So he was searching for something beyond the weirdness of quantum physics.
Yeah.
Some underlying structure that made sense of it all.
Absolutely. And he found inspiration in a rather unexpected place.
Okay.
A device he saw that involved a drop of ink being stirred into a cylinder of glycerin. As the cylinder rotated, the ink seemed to vanish, spreading out and becoming invisible. But when you reverse the rotation, the ink droplet reappeared as if by magic.
Okay, I'm picturing this in my mind.
All right.
It's like the order of the ink droplet was hidden but still present within the glycerin.
Right.
I see where you're going with this.
Exactly. Bohm saw this as a perfect analogy for how order could be hidden within a seemingly random system.
Okay.
This led him to the idea of the implicate order, a deeper level of reality where everything is interconnected and enfolded.
Yeah.
Think of it like a rolled-up piece of film containing a 3D image.
Okay.
That rolled-up film is like the implicate order.
Okay.
It holds all the information, but you can't see the full image until it's unfolded.
Okay, so the implicate order is like the hidden blueprint of reality.
Yeah.
And what we perceive as the physical world is just the unfolded version of that blueprint, what Bohm called the explicate order.
You got it. And what's fascinating is that Bohm saw the hologram as the perfect metaphor for this implicate order. Just like the information for a whole image is contained in every part of a hologram, he proposed that the entire universe might be structured like a giant flowing hologram.
So everything is interconnected.
Yeah.
And the reality we experience is just a projection from this deeper holographic level of existence.
That's the idea.
That's a pretty radical concept.
It is.
And it opens up a whole new way of thinking about things like consciousness, the paranormal, even the nature of reality itself.
Right.
Where do we even begin to unpack all of that?
Well, one of the most intriguing implications of the holographic model is how it could explain the power of belief.
Okay.
If reality is ultimately a projection of our minds, then our thoughts and expectations might have a much greater influence on the physical world than we realize.
So you're saying that our minds aren't just passive observers,
Right.
but active participants in shaping reality.
Exactly.
Are there any real-world examples that support this idea?
Let's consider the placebo effect. We've all heard about it, people experiencing real physical changes simply because they believe they're receiving a treatment, even if it's just a sugar pill.
Yeah, that's always fascinated me.
Yeah.
It's like the power of suggestion can actually override our physical reality.
Right.
Is there a specific example that really illustrates this?
There's a compelling story about a man named Mr. Wright who was suffering from terminal cancer.
Okay.
His doctor gave him a new experimental drug called Krebiozin.
Right.
And amazingly, within days, Mr. Wright experienced a remarkable recovery. His tumor shrank, his fluid buildup disappeared, and he was feeling like a new man.
So a drug worked,
Well,
a miracle cure?
not quite. It turned out that Krebiozin was actually ineffective against this type of cancer.
Oh.
Mr. Wright, being a man of science, was devastated when he learned this.
Wow.
He relapsed and was readmitted to the hospital.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So it was all just a temporary boost from the placebo effect.
It seems so.
His belief in the treatment had created the illusion of healing.
Yeah, but here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
His doctor, determined to help,
Right.
told him that a new super concentrated version of the drug had arrived
Okay.
and offered to treat him with it.
Wait a minute. I sense a twist coming.
You're right. There was no new version of the drug.
Ah,
The doctor injected Mr. Wright with plain water, a placebo.
really?
But he did it with a lot of confidence and theatrics,
Oh.
reinforcing the idea that this was the potent new Krebiozin.
And what happened?
Mr. Wright, believing he was receiving this powerful new treatment, experienced another dramatic recovery.
Wow.
His tumor shrank again and his health improved significantly.
That's incredible. So even though it was just a placebo, his belief in the treatment had a tangible effect on his body.
It seems that way.
It's like his mind was actually shaping his physical reality.
Right.
This really challenges the idea that our minds and bodies are separate entities, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And the holographic model provides a framework for understanding how this mind-body connection might work. If our bodies are ultimately holographic projections, then our beliefs and expectations can influence the blueprint from which those projections are created.
That's a pretty profound thought.
It is.
It suggests that we have a much greater capacity to influence our health and well-being than we might realize.
Right.
Are there other examples of this mind-body connection at work?
There's the fascinating case of Cassandra, a woman with multiple personality disorder.
Okay.
She claims that her condition allows her to do round-the-clock healing imagery.
Hold on. How does having multiple personalities help with healing?
According to Cassandra, even when her alternate personalities are not in control of her body, they're still aware.
Oh.
This allows her to have a constant stream of healing imagery running in the background, so to speak. She even has a subpersonality named Celise, whose sole purpose is to meditate and visualize her body's well-being 24 hours a day.
It's like having a dedicated healing team working on her internally all the time.
Right.
Do other people with multiple personalities report similar experiences?
Yes, some individuals with multiple personalities have reported enhanced healing abilities, which suggests that there's a lot more going on beneath the surface of our consciousness than we typically acknowledge.
This is really making me rethink the whole mind-body connection.
Yeah.
It seems like we're just beginning to explore the incredible potential that might lie within us.
Right.
Are there other aspects of this connection we should be considering?
Well, let's look at how cultural beliefs can shape our experiences.
Okay.
Take, for instance, the Trobriand Islanders.
All right.
They have a very open attitude toward premarital sex, yet premarital pregnancy is extremely rare and strongly discouraged.
That's interesting. It seems like their cultural belief system is acting as a form of birth control.
It's a compelling example of how shared beliefs can influence individual experiences. Even in our own culture, we see examples of this.
Okay.
Think about couples who struggle for years to conceive,
Right.
finally resort to adoption,
Yeah.
and then suddenly the woman becomes pregnant.
I've heard stories like that.
Right.
It's as if the mental and emotional block that was preventing pregnancy was lifted once the pressure of having a biological child was removed.
Exactly.
It's like their minds were influencing their bodies.
Exactly.
Okay.
It highlights the powerful interplay between our mental and emotional states and our physical well-being. And this raises the question, can we consciously control our biology?
Okay.
Can we will ourselves to be healthy or to overcome illness?
That's a big question.
It is.
Are there any examples of people who seem to have achieved this level of mastery over their bodies?
Let's look at the case of Jack Schwartz, a Dutch-born author and lecturer who gained attention in the 1970s for his remarkable ability to control his internal biological processes.
Okay.
He could consciously alter his heart rate, blood pressure, and even withstand pain through sheer willpower.
Wow.
Schwartz achieved this level of control through years of dedicated yogic practices.
So he essentially trained his mind to exert direct control over his body.
Right.
That's incredible.
Right.
But were these abilities limited to yogic masters? Could ordinary people potentially develop similar abilities?
There's a fascinating case documented by National Geographic in 1966.
Okay.
They observed a Sri Lankan firewalker named Kuta Bux, who walked across a bed of red-hot coals barefoot without any signs of burns or pain.
Really?
Bux believed his abilities were a gift from a divine source.
That's amazing. But could there be a scientific explanation perhaps tied to the holographic model?
Well, there's also the case of Mohadi, a Hindu firewalker documented by National Geographic in 1965.
Okay.
He attributed his fire immunity to the Hindu god Kataragama.
Mm.
During a religious ceremony, Mohadi pierced his cheeks and arms with skewers.
Oh, well.
And even dragged a heavy sled attached to hooks embedded in his back, all seemingly without pain or injury.
That's both fascinating and a bit unsettling.
Yeah.
Could these abilities be explained by the power of belief? Is it possible that their unwavering faith somehow shielded them from harm?
It's definitely a possibility. Consider the Jansenists, a religious sect in 18th century France. They were known for their extreme religious practices and their ability to withstand pain and torture seemingly without injury.
Yeah, I remember reading about them.
Okay.
They believed these acts of self-mortification brought them closer to God.
These convulsionaries, as they were called, would willingly subject themselves to beatings and other forms of torture during their religious gatherings.
Witnesses describe seeing them endure brutal blows with hammers being pierced with swords, even walking on fire, all without any apparent pain or injury.
Their unwavering faith might have acted as a shield protecting them from harm. The holographic model suggests that their beliefs, their complete immersion in their religious fervor, could have created a holographic reality where pain and injury were simply not possible.
So their minds, shaped by their beliefs, were influencing their physical experiences.
Right.
That's a powerful idea. But what about those cases where belief seems to extend beyond the individual, where it seems to influence external reality?
Right.
Are those explainable through the holographic lens as well?
Let's step into the realm of miracles.
Okay.
There's the case of Vittorio Michele, a devout Catholic, who in 1962 traveled to the sanctuary of Lourdes seeking a cure for a tumor in his left hip. Despite undergoing radiation therapy, his condition worsened.
Okay.
And he was diagnosed with a severe bone infection that destroyed a significant portion of his pelvic bone.
It sounds like he was facing a very grim prognosis.
Essentially, he was given a death sentence.
Wow.
But Michele never lost his faith in the healing power of Lourdes.
Okay.
He continued to pray, and incredibly, over the next few years, his pelvic bone completely regenerated.
Really?
Medical examinations confirmed this inexplicable regrowth of bone, a phenomenon that baffled doctors.
Wow. A true medical mystery.
It is.
So was it a miracle? Did his faith in the Lord somehow trigger his healing?
While some attribute it to divine intervention, the holographic model offers another perspective.
Okay.
Could Michele's unwavering belief, his deep connection to the spiritual energy of Lourdes, have somehow influenced the holographic blueprint of his body?
It's as if his mind, through the power of belief, was able to rewrite the script of his physical reality.
Right.
This opens up so many questions about the nature of reality and the power of our minds. Where do we go from here? What other mind-bending concepts will we be uncovering as we continue our exploration of the holographic universe?
In the next part of our deep dive, we'll venture even further into the extraordinary implications of the holographic model.
All right.
We'll explore cases of psychokinesis, precognition, and delve into the nature of consciousness itself.
Okay.
Get ready for some more mind-blowing revelations.
Sounds good.
Prepare to have your mind stretched even further, because we're going to delve into some truly remarkable events that suggest our minds might be capable of much more than we typically imagine.
All right, lay it on me. I'm ready to explore the outer limits of what's possible.
Let's talk about psychokinesis, or PK for short.
Okay.
The ability to influence physical matter with the power of the mind.
You mean like bending spoons with your thoughts?
That's a classic example.
Okay.
But PK can take many forms. Talbot highlights the research of Robert G. John, a professor of aerospace sciences at Princeton University. John started out skeptical about all this paranormal stuff.
Right.
But he ended up founding the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, or PEER for short, after witnessing some pretty compelling evidence of PK in his students' experiments.
So what kind of experiments were they doing at PEER? How do you even go about studying something like PK in a scientific way?
They used a device called a random event generator, or RAG.
Okay.
Think of it like a super fancy coin flipper that uses radioactive decay to generate a totally random sequence of ones and zeros.
Okay, so it's all about probability.
Right.
You flick a coin enough times, you should get roughly a 50-50 split between heads and tails.
Right.
So how did they use the RAG to study PK?
They had volunteers sit in front of the RAG and try to influence the output, like trying to make it produce more ones than zeros. And over thousands of trials, they found that some people could actually do it. They created a small but statistically significant deviation from chance.
Wow, so they were actually influencing the decay of radioactive material with their minds.
It seems so.
Is there any way to explain that within the framework of conventional physics?
Not really. Traditional science has a hard time explaining how the mind, a non-physical thing, could interact with physical matter in that way.
Right.
But the holographic model offers a possible solution.
I'm all ears. How does holography fit into psychokinesis?
If we think of reality as a shared holographic projection, then influencing the physical world with our minds might not be as far-fetched as it sounds. It's like adjusting the projector lens, so to speak, to tweak the image that's being projected.
Right.
Our thoughts and intentions in this holographic framework could interact with the underlying information field from which reality is projected, and that's how they'd influence the physical world.
Okay, I can see how that might work. But if our minds can influence things in the present, could they reach beyond the present moment into the past or even the future? Is that even remotely possible?
Talbot explores some pretty mind-bending examples of what seems to be precognition, the ability to see into the future.
Okay.
One of the cases he discusses is Stefan Osowicki, a Polish clairvoyant who could hold an object and accurately describe events from its past, even going back hundreds of years.
That's like psychometry, right?
Yeah.
Tuning into the history of an object. But what about seeing into the future? Did he do that too?
Osowicki also demonstrated the ability to predict future events with uncanny accuracy.
Wow.
He even predicted the details of his own death, including the date and the circumstances.
That's sending chills down my spine. Are there other documented cases of people catching glimpses of things to come?
Talbot also mentions George McMullen, a truck driver, who, in addition to his psychometric abilities, could tune into the history of archaeological sites.
Right.
He could accurately describe the people who lived there, their customs, even the layout of their buildings.
Yeah.
And archaeologists later confirmed his descriptions.
It's like these individuals were tapping into some kind of historical database. But how is that even possible?
Once again, the holographic model offers a possible explanation.
Okay.
If the past isn't gone, but rather enfolded within this vast holographic universe, then perhaps it's accessible to those who've developed the ability to tune into those frequencies.
It's as if the past is still present, just vibrating at a different frequency that we can't normally perceive. Okay, but what about the future? Can we really see events that haven't happened yet?
There's some compelling research on precognition, including the work of Harold Puthoff and Russell Targ at Stanford Research Institute.
Okay.
They were studying remote viewing.
Right.
And they discovered that some people could accurately describe remote locations that experimenters were visiting, even before those locations were chosen.
Hold on. They could describe places they had never even been to.
Yeah.
That's like mental teleportation.
It gets even weirder. In some instances, the remote viewers described locations that the experimenters would visit in the future before those locations were even decided upon.
Wow.
They were seemingly peering into the future.
All right, now we're really venturing into the Twilight Zone. How does the holographic model account for precognition?
If we think of time not as a straight line, but rather as coexisting simultaneously within the holographic universe, then the future, just like the past, might be accessible to those who can shift their perception to those frequencies.
So it's like all possible futures are already out there encoded within this cosmic hologram, and some people can tune into those possibilities.
That's one way to think about it.
Okay.
But it raises an even bigger question.
Okay.
If the future isn't set in stone, but rather a collection of possibilities, can our minds influence which of those possibilities become reality? Could we shape our own destinies?
Whoa. You're saying we might be able to nudge the future in a certain direction with our thoughts?
Yeah.
That's a pretty heavy concept to wrap my head around.
It is.
Talbot explores this in the context of precognitive dreams.
Right.
He shares stories of people who dreamed of future events, often tragic ones, and then took steps to avoid those events.
Yeah.
In some cases, their actions seemed to alter the outcome, suggesting that the future they saw in their dream wasn't inevitable after all.
Right.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy that you can actually dodge if you heed the warning signs.
Right.
But if our minds can influence the future, what about the past? Is it possible to change events that have already happened?
That's where things get really mind-bending.
Yeah.
Talbot touches on research suggesting the possibility of retroactive psychokinesis, the ability to influence events that have already occurred.
Okay.
He mentions Helmut Schmidt, a physicist who conducted experiments using random number generators and found evidence that people could influence the output of those generators even after the numbers had been generated and recorded.
But they could affect something that had already happened?
Right.
How on earth is that possible?
It defies our conventional understanding of time and causality, but the holographic model offers a possible explanation.
Okay.
If time isn't linear within this holographic universe, then the past, present, and future might all be interconnected and susceptible to influence from our minds.
So we're not just passive travelers on the river of time. We might actually be able to paddle upstream and alter the course of events.
That's the power of the holographic model.
This is seriously challenging everything I thought I knew about reality.
It suggests that we are active participants in the creation of reality. Our thoughts, beliefs, and intentions might have a far greater impact on the world around us and even on the flow of time itself than we ever imagined.
Okay, we've covered some pretty incredible concepts. Psychokinesis, precognition, even the idea that we might be able to tinker with the past and the future with our minds. But where do we go from here? What other mind-boggling implications of the holographic model are we going to uncover?
Get ready to venture beyond the physical realm as we explore near-death experiences, out-of-body phenomena, and the possibility that consciousness might exist independently of the brain. Hold on tight, because we're about to explore the edges of consciousness, those mysterious realms that lie beyond the physical body.
I'm ready for the journey.
Yeah.
What kind of mind-bending territory are we stepping into now?
Let's start with out-of-body experiences, or OBEs for short.
Okay.
These are those incredible moments when someone's consciousness seems to detach from their physical body and travel to other places,
Right.
often seeing things that would be impossible to see from their physical location.
Yeah, I've heard about people having OBEs during surgery or near-death experiences. But is it really possible for people to just will themselves out of their bodies?
Talbot tells the story of Robert Monroe, a former radio and television executive who started having spontaneous OBEs in the late 1950s.
Okay.
At first, he was terrified, thinking he was losing his mind. But eventually, he learned to control these experiences, leaving his body at will to explore non-physical realms.
So he became like a seasoned astral traveler. What did he find on his journeys?
Monroe wrote 2 fascinating books about his experiences, Journeys Out of the Body and Far Journeys.
Okay.
He described being able to pass through solid objects, travel to distant places instantly, and even interact with other beings he encountered in those realms.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But is there any scientific evidence to back up these claims, or is it all just subjective experience?
While OBEs are tough to study scientifically, there are some interesting cases that suggest they might be more than just hallucinations.
Okay.
Talbot mentions a case investigated by Dr. Robert Morris, a parapsychologist who used animals to try to detect these out-of-body visits.
Wait, how do you use animals to study OBEs? That sounds fascinating.
In one experiment, Morris noticed that a kitten belonging to a talented OBE practitioner named Keith Harari would consistently stop meowing and start purring whenever Harari was invisibly present in the room, even though he was supposedly out of his body.
So the kitten was sensing something that our normal senses couldn't pick up. That's pretty compelling.
It is.
But how does the holographic model explain OBEs?
If consciousness isn't confined to the brain, but is part of a larger holographic field, as Bohm and Pribram suggested,
Right.
then it might be possible for our awareness to detach from our physical bodies and travel within that field, experiencing reality from a different point of view.
So our consciousness is like a radio receiver that can tune into different frequencies of reality.
All right.
And in an OBE state, it's no longer limited to the physical body.
That's a great analogy. And the holographic model also helps explain why people sometimes report inconsistencies in their OBEs.
What kind of inconsistencies are you talking about?
Sometimes people who have OBEs can accurately describe a distant location, but then get some details wrong, like the color of an object or the arrangement of furniture.
Okay.
This suggests that their perception might be based on a holographic interpretation of information rather than direct sensory input,
Right.
which can sometimes lead to variations in the perceived details.
It's like our minds are trying to reconstruct a holographic image from incomplete data, which can lead to some glitches in the projection. That
Okay.
makes sense. But what about those experiences that happen right at the edge of life and death?
Yeah.
Near-death experiences, or NDEs, have been reported by people from all walks of life, and they often contain similar elements. How does the holographic model shed light on those?
NDEs offer a really intriguing glimpse into the nature of consciousness.
Okay.
Talbot draws on the work of Dr. Kenneth Ring, a psychologist who has spent years studying NDEs.
What are some of the common things that people who have had NDEs report?
Many describe feeling like they're leaving their bodies floating above the scene and watching events from a detached perspective. Some report traveling through a tunnel toward a brilliant light, encountering deceased loved ones, or feeling a deep sense of peace and interconnectedness.
It sounds like a journey into a completely different realm of existence. But are these experiences just hallucinations produced by the dying brain, or could they be something more?
Based on his research, Ring believes that NDEs are more than just physiological responses to trauma. He sees them as a potential window into a realm of pure consciousness, a realm that exists independently of the physical body.
And how does the holographic model fit into this?
The descriptions of NDEs often line up with what we might expect in a holographic universe.
Right.
The feeling of interconnectedness, the transcendence of time and space, the presence of light and vibrations.
Yeah.
These all resonate with the idea of reality as a projection of consciousness from a deeper, more fundamental level of existence.
So it's like during an NDE, our consciousness briefly shifts its perception to this deeper holographic realm,
Right.
experiencing a different set of frequencies that are normally hidden from us.
Exactly. And this raises the incredible possibility that consciousness might not be limited to the physical body, but rather exists as a fundamental aspect of the universe itself,
Right.
perhaps woven into the very fabric of this holographic reality.
Wow, that's a truly profound thought. It suggests that death might not be the end of consciousness,
Yeah.
but rather a transition to a different state of being, a different way of experiencing reality.
Indeed. The holographic model opens up a whole new way of thinking about life, death, and the nature of consciousness. It challenges us to consider that the reality we perceive might be just one facet of a much grander and interconnected universe.
Right.
A universe where consciousness is not merely a product of the brain, but a fundamental force that shapes and permeates all of existence.
Well, we've certainly gone far beyond the familiar landscape of everyday reality. This deep dive into the holographic universe has been absolutely incredible. It's made me question everything I thought I knew about the world and the potential of my own mind.
Remember, the holographic model is still a theory,
Right.
but it's gaining more and more attention as evidence from different fields continues to emerge. It's a perspective that encourages us to embrace the mysteries of the universe and explore the uncharted territories of our own consciousness.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that reality might be far more fluid and interconnected than we tend to believe.
Yeah.
Our minds might be capable of far more than we realize. And perhaps there's a deeper level of order and meaning to the universe that we're only beginning to glimpse.
If you're intrigued by these ideas, I highly recommend checking out Michael Talbot's book, The Holographic Universe.
Okay.
It's a fantastic starting point for your own deep dive into the mysteries of consciousness and the nature of reality.
Thank you so much for joining us on this amazing adventure. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep wondering about the infinite possibilities that might be hidden within the holographic universe.